Imagine the crisp chill of a Midwestern autumn evening settling over the quiet streets of Crosse, Wisconsin, where porch lights flicker on one by one, and the leaves rustle like whispers in the gathering dark. It's Friday, October 23, 1953, and the air carries the distant echo of a high school football game under floodlights a few miles away. In a modest ranch-style home on 16th Street, 15-year-old Evelyn Grace Hartley arrives just after 7 p.m. to babysit 20-month-old Janice Rasmussen while her parents, Viggo and Lenore, enjoy a rare night out. Evelyn is responsible, bright, a junior at Central High with straight A's, a church choir member, and the kind of girl every parent trusts. She kisses her own mother goodbye at the door, promising to call if anything feels off. By 10:30 that night, the Rasmussen baby sleeps peacefully upstairs, untouched. But Evelyn is gone. Blood stains the living room floor. Her broken eyeglasses lie scattered near a kicked-off loafer. A window stands open to the cold. And in the space of mere minutes, a young babysitter vanishes from the heart of a safe neighborhood, plunging a small town into terror and leaving behind a mystery that, 72 years later, still refuses to yield its secrets. Evelyn Hartley was born March 21, 1938, the only child of Ethel and Richard Hartley. Richard taught English at the local college. Ethel stayed home, doting on a daughter who grew into a shy, conscientious teenager with dark, wavy hair, hazel eyes behind thick lensed glasses, and a gentle smile that rarely showed teeth. At 5'3" and 126 pounds, she wore size 6 shoes and carried herself with quiet poise. Popular but not flashy, she sang in the church choir, played piano, and dreamed of becoming a teacher. Babysitting was her way to earn, spending money, steady, reliable, always on time. That Friday she turned down a date to the homecoming game to honor her commitment to the Rasmussens, just 2 blocks from her own home on Cass Street. The evening began routinely. Viggo Rasmussen, a biology professor, and his wife left around 7, planning to return by midnight. Evelyn arrived promptly, waving as they drove off. Inside, she played with little Janice, fed her, and tucked her into the crib upstairs. The house sat on a corner lot, well lit, surrounded by neighbors who knew one another. Nothing seemed amiss. At approximately 10:15 p.m., Evelyn's father grew uneasy. She had promised to call by 10 to check in, a habit she never broke. When the phone stayed silent, Richard Hartley drove the short distance to the Rasmussen home. Finding no answer at the door, he peered through windows. Lights blazed inside. The front door was locked. Circling to the side, he discovered the basement window forced open, screen pried away. Climbing through, he entered a nightmare. The living room told a story of sudden violence. Evelyn's glasses lay broken on the floor, one lens cracked. Nearby, a single loafer, hers, sat kicked off as if in struggle. Blood spotted the carpet in several places, trailed toward the open side window where blinds hung askew. A small pool glistened near the couch. Upstairs, Janice slept undisturbed in her crib, blanket tucked neatly. Downstairs, Evelyn's purse remained on a chair, coat still hanging by the door. No note, no sign she'd planned to leave. Richard Hartley rushed outside, shouting her name into the night. Neighbors poured from homes. Someone called police at 10:37 p.m. Within minutes, Crosse officers swarmed the scene. Bloodhounds arrived quickly, picking up Evelyn's scent from the living room, tracking it out the open window, across the side yard, and into the street, where it abruptly ended as if she'd been lifted into a vehicle. Drops of blood continued sporadically down the block toward Cooley Drive, then vanished. The search exploded into one of the largest in Wisconsin history. Over 2,000 volunteers, students, faculty, townspeople, National Guard, combed fields, riverbanks, coulees, and abandoned buildings. The Mississippi River, just blocks away, was dragged repeatedly. Caves in the bluffs were explored with flashlights and ropes. Planes flew grids overhead. Roadblocks ringed the city. Every car leaving Crosse was stopped and searched. Physical evidence painted a grim picture. Inside the house, Type A blood, Evelyn's type, on the floor, and a bloody handprint on the wall too high for the toddler. Outside, more blood drops in the yard, a trail of disturbed grass suggesting dragging. One neighbor reported hearing a short, sharp scream around 9:30 p.m., muffled, quickly silenced. Another saw a dark-colored 1940s sedan cruising slowly nearby earlier that evening, two men inside. A third claimed headlights sweeping the Rasmussen yard around 10. Descriptions varied: Plymouth, Oldsmobile, Buick, but all agreed: dark, older model, no plates recalled. By dawn, the story dominated front pages statewide. Rewards climbed to over $6,000, huge for 1953. Tips flooded in. Sightings in Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa. A girl matching Evelyn's description seen walking dazed along Highway 16. Another bound in a car trunk near Madison. All proved false. Investigators zeroed in on signs of sexual motive. Evelyn's undergarments were missing from the scene, though her outer clothing remained. The forced basement window suggested an intruder who knew the layout, perhaps watching earlier. Yet nothing was stolen. The baby unharmed. Police interviewed dozens, boyfriends none serious, classmates, professors, neighbors. No enemies surfaced. Evelyn had no secrets, no runaway whispers. Early mistakes stung. The scene wasn't fully secured until hours after discovery. Neighbors and volunteers trampled potential footprints. Blood samples degraded before full typing. Fingerprint powder lifted prints from windows and walls, but none unidentified. The scream report wasn't canvassed door to door until days later. As weeks turned cold, dread settled over Crosse. Parents forbade babysitting after dark. Teenage girls walked in groups. The town that prided itself on safety now locked doors at dusk. Ethel Hartley stopped eating, staring at Evelyn's empty chair. Richard canvassed tirelessly, voice hoarse from calling her name into empty fields. Strange clues emerged. A pair of men's trousers found days later in a ditch miles away, stained with type A blood. Untraceable. Footprints near the house, size 10 or 11, led nowhere. A reported peeping Tom weeks earlier near the college. Links? None proven. Theories clashed from the start. Random predator spotting a lone girl through windows. Planned abduction by someone who knew her schedule. Sexual assault gone wrong, body dumped in the river or bluffs. Yet no remains, no ransom. No confession that stuck. Winter blanketed the search grounds in snow, burying hope. Crosse held vigils, candles flickering against the relentless dark. But beneath the unity, fear festered. Someone had walked into a lit home, overpowered a careful girl, and carried her into the night, without a trace. What really happened inside that quiet house on 16th Street while a baby slept upstairs? And who was watching Evelyn Hartley closely enough to strike the moment she was alone? The shadows held their secrets tight, waiting for the next unraveling thread. As autumn gave way to a bitter Wisconsin winter, the massive search for Evelyn Hartley ground on, but hope began to fracture under the weight of endless empty fields and frozen riverbanks. By November 1953, the 2,000 volunteers had dwindled to hundreds, then dozens, their flashlights cutting weaker beams through snow-drifted coulees. The Mississippi yielded nothing despite repeated drags. Caves in the bluffs, once crawling with searchers, stood silent again. Roadblocks long lifted. Rewards topped $6,000, yet credible tips evaporated. Crosse, a college town of 30,000 proud of its safety, now carried a wound that refused to close. Investigators pieced together a chilling timeline from fragments. The Rasmussens returned just after midnight to find Richard Hartley frantic in their yard, police already arriving. The house preserved as a crime scene. Blood drops mapped meticulously, 14 inside, more trailing outside toward the street. Type A positive, matching Evelyn's rare subtype. The bloody handprint on the living room wall, smeared as if someone braced while dragging weight, measured too large for her. Her broken glasses suggested a blow to the face. One loafer inside, the mate discovered days later in the yard, kicked off in flight or force. Neighbors' accounts conflicted yet coalesced into dread. Mrs. Virgil Cumbier, 2 doors down, heard a short scream around 9:30 p.m. High-pitched, abruptly cut off, followed by 2 or 3 thuds like car doors slamming. She dismissed it as teenagers until news broke. Another resident saw a dark sedan, possibly 1941-1948 Buick or Oldsmobile, cruising slowly past the Rasmussen home twice that evening, headlights dimmed. A third spotted a car parked oddly near the corner around 10, engine running, two male silhouettes inside. When approached later by police sketches, descriptions varied. Young, 20 to 30, dark hair, medium build. No plates. No faces clear. Physical evidence mounted unsettling layers. The basement window showed pry marks from a tool, perhaps a tire iron found nearby in weeds, blood-specked but wiped. Grass flattened in a drag path from side yard to street, ending where tires had spun briefly in gravel. Evelyn's missing undergarments fueled sexual assault theory, yet no signs of prolonged struggle inside, no overturned furniture, no defensive wounds noted on scattered items. The baby upstairs never stirred. Police canvassed relentlessly. Every registered sex offender within 50 miles interviewed. College students polygraphed. Boyfriends, Evelyn had none serious. A shy classmate who walked her home once cleared swiftly. Professors at the college, including Viggo Rasmussen himself, questioned politely. Nothing stuck. A peeping Tom reported near campus weeks earlier raised eyebrows, similar height, build, but alibi held. Bloodstained men's trousers found in a ditch 20 miles west traced to a local man who'd cut himself hunting, type mismatched. False leads tormented the Hartleys. Sightings poured in. A dazed girl in Rockford, Illinois, matching perfectly until identified as local runaway. Another bound in a Minneapolis trunk, hoax call. A bloody jacket in Iowa, unrelated. Prank confessions from drunks. One man claimed he'd buried her near Prairie du Chien. Excavation yielded deer bones. Mistakes compounded quietly. The scene trampled early, neighbors entering before full cordon, footprints obliterated. Blood samples partially degraded before full lab typing. Canvassing delayed in outlying areas. Initial focus on the river, Evelyn possibly wandering dazed and drowning, diverted from the blood trail pointing inland toward wooded coulees. Dogs lost scent at the street too soon. Community fear reshaped daily life. Babysitting jobs canceled citywide. Teenage girls forbidden solo walks after dusk. Doors bolted early. Central High held assemblies on safety. Churches prayed for Evelyn by name. Ethel Hartley withered visibly, chain smoking on the porch, staring toward 16th Street. Richard taught classes mechanically, voice hollow, grading papers with red ink that blurred in his vision. Winter deepened isolation. Snow buried search grids. By spring 1954, organized hunts ceased. Police scaled back, file open but cold. Theories hardened. Opportunistic predator spotting lights through windows, entering basement, surprising Evelyn on the phone or radio. Quick overpowering, chloroform rumored but unproven, no bottle found. Sexual intent clear, body disposed expertly. Links whispered to other crimes. 1951 babysitter attacks in Colorado, 1954 vanishings elsewhere. Gein, arrested 1957 in nearby Plainfield for ghastly crimes, briefly eyed. Age wrong, location distant, no tie. Decades crept forward with phantom echoes. 1960s. New sheriff reopened files, re-interviewed aging neighbors, memories faded. 1970s. Anonymous letter claiming Evelyn buried under a new highway ramp, dug negative. 1980s. Psychic visions of bluffs and water searched fruitlessly. Richard Hartley died 1989, still leaving porch light on. Ethel followed 1995, clutching Evelyn's choir robe. The 1990s brought fleeting hope. A Minnesota inmate confessed. Abducted, assaulted, dumped in river. Polygraph failed, details invented from newspapers. Another claim from prison, body in abandoned quarry. Dry bones only. Technology teased, ground-penetrating radar scan yards, no anomalies. Into the new millennium, Crosse listed her endangered missing on state databases. NAMA's entry detailed dental charts, the small scar on her forehead, blood type. Age progressed, images circulated. What Evelyn might look like at 60, 70. Podcasts revived interest. Crime Junkie, thin air episodes dissecting blood patterns, car sightings. Facebook groups swelled with theories. Local killer covering tracks, transient from football game crowd, even mob hit, mistaken identity dismissed swiftly. Conflicting evidence endured. Struggle yet precision. No noise waking baby, quick cleanup implied. Stranger yet possible familiarity, someone knowing Rasmussen's out, lights on, girl alone. River disposal versus inland burial. Sexual crime without completion inside house. As 2025 closes, 72 years gone, La Crosse Police Cold Case Unit keeps her file active. Tips still trickle, call 608 780 559 62. No DNA without remains. No statute on murder. The Rasmussen home sold decades ago, remodeled, new families unaware of blood once staining floors. The town remembers quietly. Homecoming games pause for safety talks. Babysitters text check-ins. Parents drive 2 blocks rather than let teens walk alone. Evelyn Grace Hartley's laughter, soft, church choir pure, echoes only in memory now. Her broken glasses rest in evidence boxes. Her blood drops long cleaned. But the darkness that entered through a basement window that October night never truly left. It lingers in the corners of lit homes, in the pause before answering a knock, in the quick glance over shoulder on autumn walks. Who watched long enough to know exactly when the house held only a 15-year-old girl and a sleeping child, and who carried her out into the cold Wisconsin night, leaving just enough evidence to torment, and not enough to ever tell the full story. The trail ends where it began, at the edge of a quiet street, under porch lights that still burn a little brighter in La Crosse when dusk falls. As the years stretched into decades, the disappearance of Evelyn Hartley transformed from a frantic manhunt into a haunting legend that clung to La Crosse like mist off the Mississippi. By the 1960s, the once frenzied searches had become occasional, almost ritualistic sweeps whenever a new sheriff took office or a tip sparked fleeting hope. The blood evidence, those 14 drops inside the house, the smeared handprint, the trail across the yard, had long been cleaned, photographed, and filed away in boxes that gathered dust in the basement of the police station. Yet every autumn, when the leaves turned the same shades of red and gold as that October night in 1953, the town seemed to hold its breath a little longer at dusk. The emotional toll on the Hartley family was merciless. Ethel Hartley, once a warm and welcoming homemaker, withdrew into a private grief that no amount of community support could pierce. She kept Evelyn's room exactly as it had been, choir robe folded on the chair, piano music open on the stand, a single babysitting earnings jar still holding a few coins. Richard continued teaching English at the college, but colleagues noticed how his lectures on Shakespearean tragedy grew longer, more personal, as if he were speaking directly to an absent daughter. He died in 1989, leaving instructions that his porch light remain on every night. Ethel followed in 1995, her final years spent clutching a faded photo of Evelyn in her confirmation dress, whispering apologies for letting her walk those 2 blocks alone. La Crosse changed irrevocably. The case became the cautionary tale every parent told. Babysitting after dark was forbidden for years. Teenage girls were driven door to door, even for short distances. Central High School added safety seminars to homecoming week. Churches included Evelyn in prayers decades after most had forgotten the details. The Rasmussen family moved away quietly within a year, unable to bear returning to a house where blood had stained the living room carpet beneath their daughter's crib. Investigators never stopped turning over the same stones, hoping for a new angle. In the 1970s, a new generation of detectives recanvassed the neighborhood with fresh eyes. Aging residents offered fragments, a memory of a strange car parked near the college that week, a transient scene near the football stadium the night of the game. None panned out. Anonymous tips arrived sporadically, a body buried under a new subdivision, bones in an old well. Each excavation ended in disappointment. Links to other crimes tantalized and tormented. The babysitter killer pattern, young women vanishing while caring for children, echoed cases across the Midwest. Some pointed to Colorado attacks in 1951, others to disappearances in Minnesota and Illinois. When Ed Gein was arrested in 1957, just 2 hours away in Plainfield, investigators drove there overnight. Gein's gruesome trophies and House of Horrors chilled them, but timelines and geography didn't align. No evidence connected him to Crosse. Later serial killers, Bundy, Ridgway, were examined and dismissed. Confessions came like cruel echoes. In the 1980s, a drifter in Illinois claimed he and a partner had taken Evelyn, assaulted her, and dumped her body in the river weighted with stones. He failed every polygraph question, details lifted straight from newspapers. Another inmate in the 1990s described a shallow grave in the bluffs, leading searchers to a site with ground-penetrating radar. They found only an old animal burial. Each false hope reopened wounds for the few who still carried Evelyn's memory personally. Technology offered glimmers without deliverance. By the 2000s, her case entered national databases, NAMA's Charlie Project, Doe Network. Dental charts digitized, blood type noted, description of the small forehead scar preserved. Age progression images appeared in newspapers and online forums, what Evelyn might look like at 50, 60, 70. They were heartbreaking. Hazel eyes still gentle behind imagined glasses, wavy hair graying. Internet sleuths dissected crime scene photos leaked over years, debating blood spatter patterns, drag marks, the angle of the pry tool on the basement window. Some insisted the intruder must have known the house layout. Others argued pure opportunism. Conflicting theories endured like scars. Sexual predator watching through windows, striking when parents left. Planned abduction by someone aware of the Rasmussens' plans, perhaps even advertised in the college community. Quick assault inside, interrupted by Evelyn's resistance, body carried out hastily. Or a botched burglary turned violent. The missing undergarment screamed motive, yet the untouched baby and purse suggested panic, not completion. River disposal remained popular, weighted, sunk deep, but blood trail pointed away from water. Bluff's burial, woods too vast, searched too thoroughly. Community memory shifted from panic to quiet sorrow. By the 2010s, podcasts and YouTube channels rediscovered the case. Episodes from Gone, The Vanished, and Thin Air brought new listeners, new tips. Facebook groups formed, members poring over maps, car descriptions, suspect composites yellowed with age. A 2018 documentary revisited the Rasmussen home, now remodeled beyond recognition, interviewing elderly neighbors who still flinched at the mention of that night. Crosse police maintained the file as active into 2025. Detective Sergeant Mark France, assigned cold cases, has said publicly the department would test any new DNA instantly. Tips still arrive, usually mistaken identity or misremembered decades-old gossip. The number to call remains posted, 600-8-780-559-62. A small reward fund lingers, mostly symbolic now. The physical evidence sleeps in storage, broken glasses in an envelope, blood samples degraded beyond modern profiling, the tire iron rusted. No fingerprints ever unidentified. No suspects ever charged. 72 years later, on December 22, 2025, Crosse stands quieter in winter dusk. College students hurry between classes, unaware of the ghost that walks beside them on 16th Street. Families decorate for holidays, porch lights glowing a little brighter than necessary. Babysitters, now armed with phones and rideshares, still text when they arrive, when they leave. Evelyn Grace Hartley's voice, soft from choir practice, laughing over piano keys, exists only in the memories of those now gone. Her careful footsteps between Cass and 16th Streets echo only in nightmares. The basement window has been replaced many times over, the blood long scrubbed away, the drag marks grown over with grass. Yet the question remains, heavier with every silent year. Who stood outside that lit house on October 23, 1953, watching a 15-year-old girl move from room to room, waiting for the perfect moment to force entry? Who overpowered her quickly enough that a baby upstairs never woke, yet left behind just enough blood to prove violence, and not enough evidence to ever name them? And perhaps the most chilling thought of all, if someone could walk into a bright, occupied home in the heart of a safe neighborhood, take a careful girl in minutes, and vanish her so completely that 7 decades of searching found nothing, how many other windows have they watched since, waiting for the next light to shine on someone alone? As December 22, 2025, settles over La Crosse, Wisconsin, with its familiar blanket of snow and early twilight, the disappearance of Evelyn Grace Hartley remains one of the state's most enduring and agonizing mysteries. 72 years have passed since that Friday night in October 1953, yet her name still surfaces in quiet conversations, in cold case newsletters, and in the occasional late-night phone call to the La Crosse Police Department. The file sits open in the cold case unit, marked endangered missing with presumed foul play. A modest reward fund lingers, more symbolic than practical now. No body has ever been found. No one has ever been charged. No confession has ever withstood scrutiny. The physical traces of that night have long vanished from the landscape. The Rasmussen home on 16th Street has changed hands multiple times, remodeled until no hint remains of the blood that once dotted the living room floor or the basement window that was pried open from outside. The yard where grass was flattened in a drag path is now manicured lawn, bordered by modern fences. The coulees and bluffs searched so desperately by thousands of volunteers have grown thicker with trees. The Mississippi River, dragged and dived year after year, flows on indifferently, carrying secrets it will never surrender. La Crosse itself has grown and changed. The college, now the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, sprawls larger, filled with students who walk the same streets unaware of the girl who vanished 2 blocks from campus. Homecoming football games still draw crowds under bright floodlights, just as they did that October evening. Porch lights burn a little longer in autumn, an unconscious habit passed down through generations. Parents still drive their teenagers short distances rather than let them walk alone after dark. Babysitters, now equipped with smartphones, location sharing, and rideshare apps, still send the obligatory "I'm here safe" text, a ritual born in the shadow of Evelyn's disappearance. The evidence box in police storage grows dustier with time. Inside, the broken eyeglasses carefully preserved in an envelope, lenses cracked from impact. The rusted tire iron found in nearby weeds, its faint blood specks long degraded beyond modern DNA testing. Photographs of the blood drops, the smeared handprint, the kicked-off loafer, reports yellowed at the edges. No fingerprints ever went unidentified. No clothing recovered beyond what was left behind. No trace of the dark sedan seen cruising slowly, its 2 shadowy occupants forever faceless. Investigators who inherited the case over the decades have chased every echo, ground-penetrating radar sweeps of suspected sites, interviews of now elderly neighbors whose memories blur, tips from podcasts and true crime forums, most well-meaning mistakes, some cruel hoaxes. Age-progressed images of Evelyn at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, hazel eyes still gentle, wavy hair imagined silver, have been shared thousands of times online, always with the same quiet plea: someone somewhere must recognize something. The theories have settled into a handful that refuse to die. Most experts lean toward an opportunistic sexual predator who watched the well-lit house, saw a teenage girl alone with a sleeping child, and seized a moment when the street was quiet. The forced basement window, the quick overpowering, the drag to a waiting car, all suggest planning mixed with haste. Some insist the intruder knew the Rasmussens would be out, perhaps from college gossip or casual observation. Others point to the football game crowd, hundreds of strangers in town that night, as possible cover for a transient predator. The blood trail leading away from the river argues against accidental drowning, yet the river's proximity keeps that theory alive in quieter corners. No serial killer ever definitively linked. No local suspect ever developed enough evidence for charges. No deathbed confession ever rang true. The emotional legacy is quieter but no less profound. Richard and Ethel Hartley carried their grief to their graves, leaving behind a town that still feels a collective responsibility. There are no direct descendants to keep vigils, no siblings to plead on television. Only the community memory, passed from parents to children, from old neighbors to new, keeps Evelyn present. Every few years, a journalist or podcaster revisits the story, and for a brief moment the tip line lights up again. Then silence returns. On this winter evening in 2025, as porch lights glow against the snow and families gather inside warm homes, the questions remain exactly as sharp as they were in 1953. Who stood in the shadows outside that corner lot, watching through windows as a careful, responsible girl moved from room to room checking on a sleeping toddler? Who forced entry so quietly that no neighbor noticed until it was too late, overpowered her quickly enough that her scream, if she had time to scream, was brief and silenced? Who carried Evelyn Hartley out into the October night, leaving behind broken glasses, scattered shoes, and drops of her blood as the only proof she had ever been there? And the coldest question of all, the one that settles over La Crosse like frost every autumn dusk: if someone could walk into a brightly lit home on a safe street, take a 15-year-old girl in minutes while a baby slept undisturbed upstairs, and erase her so completely that 72 years of searching, one of the largest in Wisconsin history, found absolutely nothing, how many other windows have been watched in the decades since? How many other careful girls have been alone for just long enough? And when you switch on your porch light tonight, pausing for that extra second before locking the door, are you certain the darkness outside isn't watching back?